Hello, lords and ladies. Today we're going to look at the end of World War I and the Treaty of Versailles, which is going to be the document that formally ends the war. One aside that I want to point out to you as we're going through this, and you're waiting for the objectives to slowly pop up. The United States never ratified the Treaty of Versailles, so we never ratified it. We never approved it, which means that we never joined the League of Nations. And so keep those two items in the back of your mind as we're going through this so that you understand some of the potential future issues with both of those things. So, today's objectives. We want to, and there's a lot of them, so pause it if you think you're going to need more time. But we want to discuss the extent to which the issues that caused the war in the first place were actually resolved by this treaty. Were they? Were they not? What do you think? How was Germany treated with this treaty? What are the possible implications of the Treaty of Versailles for the future? Meaning, what are the possible consequences and issues brought about because of this treaty? And what was the League of Nations? So these are the objectives that we have for the day. Again, pause it if you need more time, because we are going to move on. But some really serious questions that you need to understand and know how to answer, because this comes up all the way through the next couple of topics that we're going to cover. So the implications of this treaty cannot be overstated, and looking at what it does for the future of Germany, France, Britain, all of these new countries that are going to come about that we'll talk about because of this. So there's a lot here for you to digest. Okay, what starts to happen? We know that Germany has been fighting largely on its own. Austria had limited involvement. Germany never honored its alliance and came to Italy never honored its alliance with Germany and didn't come to defend Germany. And so largely the fighting is taking place is all Germany. So Germany starts to weaken. And when it becomes very, very clear that Germany is not going to win this war, the Kaiser, the leader of Germany, the king essentially, Wilhelm II, steps down and abdicates his throne. Pause it if you think you'll need more time. In the interim period, a new government is formed. It's called the Weimar Republic under Chancellor Ebert. He is the one in power who agrees to this armistice. An armistice is a truce, an agreement to end the fighting with the Allies, effective November 11th, 1918, Armistice Day, today called Veterans Day. So initially that holiday was started to commemorate the end of World War I. So Germany weakened, and when the United States got involved in the war, it proved to be a bit overpowering for the Germans, and they simply could not carry on this war effort. And unrest in Germany made it so that the Kaiser really did need to step down, and when he abdicated, the new Weimar government is put into power, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. This is a newspaper, right? Armistice signed, fighting is over, the war is ended, so Armistice Day, Truce Day, is a big deal throughout all of Europe. Now, what is going to happen? Because to the victor go the spoils, right? So let's take a look and assess what state is Europe and indeed the world in right now because of World War I. So Germany agrees to this armistice in November of 1918. The problem is the war was so devastating. These are just three of the major problems. You have over 8 million men dead, 21.2 million more wounded. Then, in 1918, a flu epidemic goes throughout the world and kills 20 million more people. On top of all of that, these countries are in a shamble, particularly France and Russia, because that's where the majority of the fighting took place. How do we rebuild? How do we pay back all of this debt that we've incurred by taking out these loans? You might want to pause it. Taking out these loans to wage war and build the things that we needed. How do we even begin going about rebuilding? So these are some serious problems that the world faces in the aftermath of this war. That's going to come back to the question of, well, whose fault is this? Who is to blame for all of this? Okay, so we're also going to have a few more problems that I want to examine with you in a moment. So just be patient until they come up. But who's really at fault for this? And what else? What other challenges are these nations fighting and facing? So all of the dead, all of the wounded. Who's going to pay for all of this? A massive flu epidemic coming through and devastating more and more people. On top of that, you start to see what used to be strong central governments fail, and you have a radical, meaning an extremist element that starts to take over, and no place is that more dominant than when we see Russia, the Bolshevik communists, coming in and taking over and creating the Soviet Union. That's just one example. We'll see several more in the aftermath of this war. Not only that, and pause it if you need, but colonies controlled by European powers right now say, strike while the iron's hot. This is a perfect time to rise up against them. So you're going to see some colonies are trying to fight for their independence at this time because Europe is in a weakened state. This means that imperialism is threatened. So there's a lot going on right now that the Europeans have to be worried about. But can they worry, should they worry about these colonies when their own countries are in complete shambles right now? These are the questions of the day. The countries in the best shape, well, the country in the best shape is probably the United States at this point because there wasn't the fighting on their soil. That's one. And two, the United States got involved very, very late in the war and made a fortune on selling war material prior to their involvement in the war. So the United States is actually, though, it has to call in a lot of loans, it's lent a lot of money to European countries, but really, it's in good shape. So, to the victor go the spoils, as we said. They're going to have to decide where to meet. And so what you're going to see is they choose Paris. And again, pause this if you need to do this. But in Paris, there are many, many countries represented, but we're going to look at the big three. That's America, with Woodrow Wilson as the president, David Lloyd George of Great Britain, okay, and Georges Clemenceau of France. These are the three who are going to have the largest say, and some of the other countries are actually going to be kind of frustrated by that and feel slighted. So America wants a League of Nations. This is Woodrow Wilson. He says this in his 14 points plan, and he also wants national self-determination for those countries who are trying to form themselves in the aftermath of this war. David Lloyd George is interested in punishing Germany, but he is more afraid of Russia. He feels that the communist threat in Russia is a bigger threat, and so he doesn't want to be too harsh with Germany. Whereas France is all about punishing Germany, weakening Germany. And think about that. There's the big three right there. You've got Clemenceau far to the left, Woodrow Wilson, and then Lloyd George next to Wilson. Think about it. The Americans and the British don't share a border with Germany, but France does. And France says, you know what? We share a border with this country. This country attacked us in the Franco-Prussian War, now in World War I. We need a weakened Germany. So France is really going to be the one pushing for the punishment. Now, issues that these allies are facing when they're discussing this is secret treaties that they made during the war. How do you think they got Italy to sit down and not jump in? They've made promises to Italy that they now are going to be expected to keep. And Woodrow Wilson is very, very determined that these former colonies, like Armenia or Serbia, Bosnia, Montenegro, all of these, particularly in southeastern Europe, Poland is not a country at this point. He wants these countries to be able to choose for themselves what kind of government they want. And in his mind, that best form of government will be democracy. So that is a sticking point for him. And in order to get that League of Nations in place that he wants, which is this body that he views as being able to solve world disputes before they erupt into war like we just saw, he is going to be willing to make a lot of concessions to the other countries. So all of these issues are going to come into play as we are looking at and investigating the end of this war. Now, given you know what they want, you know the problems they had, particularly promises they made to Italy that they're not going to be able to fully honor, let's see what they actually do with this treaty. Okay? So what are the actual provisions, meaning the terms, of this Treaty of Versailles? Okay, what does the treaty provide for? So in June of 1919, this treaty is going to end the war. It is probably most famous for the first thing that I have there under the date, war guilt clause. Basically, it's a clause in the treaty where Germany accepts all blame for causing the war. This allows them, if you broke it, you buy it. Makes sense? So Germany now, they've paved the way for Germany to have to pay reparations. Reparations are payments for war damages, you might want to write that down, to all of the Allied nations. It also forced the German army to be about 100,000 men. It allowed them only 6 destroyers in their navy and destroy all the submarines, and they were forced to destroy the Luftwaffe, meaning the German Air Force. So serious reductions on German military power and its ability to raise an army even in the aftermath of this war. This is just the start, however. So far we're seeing Germany accepting the blame, accepting then the responsibility for paying for all of the damages, and losing a significant chunk of its military power. Now, what else does this treaty provide for? Well, as we're looking, we know that the French in the Franco-Prussian War lost Alsace and Lorraine to the Germans. One of the treaty's provisions will state that those 2 pieces of land are returned to France. But more importantly, so the Germans are going to be angry about that. There's some coal mines in those regions. There are some resources there that they wanted, or they would never have tried to take them in the first place. So this is going to be a point of contention. Also, the Rhine River is on the border between Germany and France. They make it now a demilitarized zone so that no German troops can be stationed in the Rhineland. Doesn't preclude the French, though, from pointing their guns into Germany. So there is some tension about that. And last but not least, Europeans redrawn maps again. We saw that this did not work out well, and again, pause it if you need more time. We saw that this did not work out well when it came to Africa. They're going to end the Congress of Vienna for that matter, but Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, all these new Baltic countries are going to become countries in their own right, and some of them are not equipped to handle that and to put the governments in place. So we are going to see this redrawing of the map is going to cause some issues. The idea that Wilson had, national self-determination, trying to get all of these countries to decide for themselves, is difficult. So that's the Treaty of Versailles. This is the opening page to it. These are some of the headlines, right? Treaty of Versailles makes peace between Germany. Reparations. Now take a look at this cartoon and pause it if you need, but $55 billion for the Germans. We give you until Monday, March 7th to decide on our terms, right? So did Germany have a choice? The Weimar government in Germany is looked at as being the people responsible for this awful treaty. That's the demilitarized zone in the red. This is how much land that Germany lost, okay, in that war under the Weimar Republic. And last but not least, we see that it creates the, or I'm sorry, before least there, we saw that the Treaty of Versailles really leads to the rise of Hitler. Here you can see there's a child in the corner, peace and future cannon fodder. The child is crying. The tiger, curious. I seem to hear a child weeping. Where these, world leaders, Clemenceau, George, David Lloyd George, and Woodrow Wilson, have now created the conditions by which another generation of men will be put to death by cannon, because this cartoonist is foreseeing these issues have not fully been resolved to the point where this will end. So there will be problems in the future based on this treaty, and again, we'll look at that more in depth as we have a discussion in class. I hope you have a good evening. Good night.